Thanks guys. So welcome back. So today we are going to start with our session 4, which is going to be talking about the data types. This is going to be a very important topic because you would need to know what are the Java data types, and when the MapReduce start, your instructor would be letting you know what are the various Hadoop data types and how to work with it. You should also know how to download the documentation and play around with the documentation. So what I have done is I have gone down to the website and I have clicked on download JDK 1.6 documentation, and which takes me to the Java SE downloads. And when I go down to the top over here in downloads, let me scroll down. So you see over here in your JDK 7, this is JDK 8. I don't need JDK 8. JDK 6 is not readily available, so the documentation would be the same. JDK 1.7 would have something more, so that's fine. The basics remains the same. So this is what you have to download, the JDK 1.7 docs. So when you click on this download, it will take you to a page where you can download the documentation. Let me just go back. There we see. So you can accept it and you can download the documentation. It will be this JDK 6 or JDK 7 API docs. So once you download it and once you extract it, I have got it onto my desktop, and you know that you're listening to this recording because this is your Java basics for Hadoop. Let me quickly go down to my shortcut window, and I have got something called a shortcut to index.html. So just give me a minute. Yeah, there we go. So when I double click on this, you see here how it has already taken me to the Java documentation. So this is how the documentation window would be looking like. We will be looking at this as we go ahead. So if you see this page, so once you download the documentation, you will need to go down to a folder called as docs. So once you extract the documentation, go inside a folder called as docs. Inside that, you will have to go down to the API folder and you will see a file called as index.html. So once you click that file, it will open up the documentation. It will open up the page for you. Okay, so this is what is needed. So now let's carry on. So today we are going to talk about the data types. What all are the different data types that we have in Java? And data types can either be primitive data types or else it could be user-defined types. That is basically a class. So why is it called as primitive data types? Because it's been there from the legacy times. So there are 8 primitive data types broken into 4 categories. Let's look at that. Ideally, you know that I'll be typing in as I speak every time, but then since this was already typed, and as I told you, the reason the recording was not able to come up properly, I'm re-recording it. So I'm not going to type this again, friends. I'm just going to read from what we have already done. So we discussed about what are data types. If you look at the integral category, there are 4 types in the integral category. You have got a byte, you have got a short, you have got an int, and you have got a long. So byte is going to be 8 bits, and the limit of it from the size perspective is 2 raised to 8. That means it will be 256 would be the maximum limit of it. Whereas the range, it will take both integral and floating point can take positive and negative values. So it will be from -128 to 127. So that is about the byte. Then you have got your short. The short is going to be 16 bits. Then you have got int, which is the default, which is going to be 32 bits. And then we have got long, which is going to be 64 bits. So let's take a simple example to see how does this work. So let me go down to the operators, data types. There we go. So this is the code that I have just done some time back. So in the first part of it, what am I doing is I'm declaring a byte of 127. It works fine. Now how do I go about with this? Let me cut these things and put it into a notepad document, and I will bring it back again, because that is the only option that we have right now. Because since all the code is already recorded, I don't want to type the whole thing again. I will cut and paste the relevant part into the code, and so that you'll get a simulation of it being done live. So here I've got data types. I declared something called as 127, and let me show it with 130. The moment I say 130, it would give me an error. Okay, and see, I have copy pasted what is the error over here as a documentation for you. Type mismatch, because anything that is beyond 127 would be considered as an int. And in fact, why as an int? Because you saw over here the default of the integral type is int. So anything that is beyond that would be considered as an int. So you see the error coming in. So that's the reason why I had commented this. And when you run this, you would get the necessary expected output of in fact, we didn't write any sysout statement, so you don't see any output here, but then the code was compiled. The reason why it is giving it as warning is because it's trying to tell you that, hey, I have not used that local variable a anywhere. That is understandable, so that's not a problem. So this is about byte. Then what did we do is the default is a integral type. So for short, the size would be 16 bits. For int, it would be 32 bits, and that is what is going to be the default. So when we create a long, so let's say I cut this from here and I paste it over here, and see over here, long C with 300 or long C1 till 10 characters. You see I have written 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and then 1. Long C1 till 10 characters is all fine. Okay, and but if it goes beyond 10 characters, it will go beyond the range of 32 bits. Okay, so long can hold 64 bits, but then since the default of the integral category is an int, it will give you an error. So let's see what the error is all about. So first let's see the error, and then you see over here how I have copy pasted the error. Let me go back. And when I run this without the L, you will see that I've added one more to it. That means it becomes 11 characters now. Anything till 10 is fine. More than 10 will give you an error. So when I take this mouse on top of the error, it tells you that the literal type of type int, although I declared it as long, the compiler is still giving me an int because the default of the integral type is an int. So to solve that, you will have to write a L, capital L, because small l will look like 1. So that is what the convention is, to have it as a capital L. So when I say write it as a capital L, then the error goes away. So the point that we have to remember over here is long is going to be 64 bits. Since the default of the integral type is int, even while initializing long, it will give by default only the int type. So to use the long type, it should be not long time. To use the long type, we should suffix with a value with a L after the value. Okay, we should suffix the variable with a, see, when you read it for the second time, you see there are some English spelling mistakes. My apologies for that, not deliberate. I'm trying to do it live. Okay, so we would suffix the variable with a L after the value. So that's about your integral types, friends. Then we have got the floating point category. The difference between the integral and the floating point category is that floating point would take a decimal. There are two floating point categories. We have got float and double. The default is going to be double. It is not float, it's going to be double. So if you look at my example, yep, so what am I doing is we are seeing some examples of float. So I'm just going to copy all of these things and I'm going to put it back because this finishes our example. So what I did over here is I said float is equal to 10. Okay, float f is equal to 10. That works fine because the default of the integral type is int, and it will smoothly go into a float which is also of type int. But the moment I say 10.00, it'll give you an error. The error it gives you is that cannot convert from double to float. But then I didn't write a double. Why did it consider as a double? Because the default of the floating point category is double. So that's the reason why it gave you the thing that, okay, you have to use a double. So what we have done over here is, of course, this will give me an error. So what am I going to do is, let me comment it. And let me save this. So now if I want to keep it as a float, you will have to write a small f after the value. If you want float, if you don't want 64-bit precision, you are happy with 32-bit precision, since the default of the floating point is always 64-bit, you will have to suffix the value with an f. So you can see over here that even while using float, since the default is double, we should suffix the value with the f if we need only 32 bits. Okay, so that's what we are seeing over here. And if you write with double, you don't have to use an f. And this is about typecasting. So this is in one of the operators that we have seen. So I'm going to comment this. We haven't reached here until now. When we reach our operators, I will explain to you what is the meaning of typecasting. Okay, so this is about the data types. So folks, it's very important that you understand this. Have a look at the complete reference, have a look at the Head Start, Head First Java, and look at these types and practice it, because since this is just going to be the Java basics for Hadoop, we are trying to let non-Java developers know what are the various types or what are the various concepts that is must for you to understand before you can dive deep into MapReduce. So we spoke about the categories of data types. So we have seen what is the floating point category. The next category is going to be textual category. So textual category is something that would take all text matters. So let's take the example of a character. So the character is going to be a text category, and it is going to take 16-bit Unicode. Unicode means it can take all foreign languages. You see localization, different languages coming in, Hindi websites coming in. That is all thanks to the Unicode feature set that we have. And then the last one is going to be the logical type, which is of type Boolean, which means it is going to take it as true or false. The default of a Boolean is always false. Okay, but then it will give you two values. It's going to give you true or false. So those are the various those are the various data types that we have, folks. So let me just go back over here. So we have finished with the concept of our data types. Okay, so what I'll do is I will pause the recording over here and I will produce it so that at least we have reached a logical ending of our first part of it. And I will mention over here, this is going to be session 4.5. I'm breaking up session 4 into two parts because, as I told you, I had issues when I was trying to produce a 50 minutes video. So I don't want to do that again. Whatever I had recorded 50 minutes went away, so I'm a little bit careful this time. So let me pause over here, and the balance part of it we will be covering it up in our next session. That is going to be operators. There are different categories of operators, and once you finish with the balance about 20 to 25 minutes, you would have reached about 2.5 hours and you would have finished 25% of the Java syllabus, folks. So the focus here is please practice, understand what it is, and please do hands-on. There is no shortcut to actual hands-on because MapReduce is going to be not a cakewalk, but then once you understand the concepts, it's all going to be a Java skills which will help you in writing that code out. Okay, so thank you so much. See you in the session 4.5 wherein we will talk about operators.